Hello, good evening. Welcome yet again to the Minority Report. I am Marlon David. I am your host on this program, and I want to say that I really appreciate you taking the time and making the effort to log into our program this evening. This evening, as per usual, we have a very interesting lineup. We have a guest in studio that is raring to go with the conversation that we're going to carry today. However, before we get to that place, let me take the opportunity to officially welcome you, all viewers and so on, to the Minority Report. You're viewing this program on Tobago Updates website, Tobago Updates YouTube channel, and I think the platform most persons utilize is the Tobago Updates Facebook page. So let me encourage you, as you view the page, to share your comments and make your suggestions, some recommendations. And for those of you who really want to get some questions in or some comments in, you can also utilize the facility of WhatsApp, where we can have your comments through the WhatsApp number 284-6597. That's 284-6597. So I want to encourage you to share the link and share the live with persons. Let's get as many people on board this evening as we are about to get into this evening's program. Before we do also, let's have a look at the What's Good moment segment that we began recently, where we identify things that have been happening in Tobago that we know engenders community spirit and lends itself to the overall goodness, as it were, on the island. We want to take the opportunity, firstly, to congratulate TPAC yet again. And I mean, I can hear persons right now thumping their desk and smiling for all those patrons who would have attended the opening night of the Heritage season. An amazing performance put on there by TPAC. And I mean, I must say, every time I look at TPAC and I see the performances, I ask myself, is this really what comes out of Tobago? And I must say that it is world class, to say the least, the way that we've seen the creative industry burst forth again through TPAC and again under the leadership of its CEO Elvis Rajman, doing an amazing job in terms of harnessing the wealth of talent that he has been provided with when TPAC as an entity was constituted. We saw a depiction of the fall of the tree in Culloden, old folklore and so on. You know, growing up you would have heard a lot about that tree and so on, and the fact that it's supposed to remain standing and what would happen if it fell. And we see TPAC taking the responsibility to bring to life that particular folklore and that tale that we've heard, and I'm certain that many persons would have learned quite a lot in terms of their attendance and those who would have viewed online via the live stream. I want to say something, though. I hope that this is also a production that we can see TPAC packaged professionally, apart from the live viewing, but we can look forward to seeing it packaged professionally and even distributed in the various film festivals throughout the world. So congratulations once again to TPAC, and the way that TPAC is going, it seems as if every week or every 2 weeks they are in the news with amazing strides in the industry. I also want to give and send out congratulations to Miss Leanne Charles, the winner of the Miss Heritage Personality title 2022, and she represented the community of Pembroke, as she was affectionately referred to as Miss Pembroke. Leanne Charles, yet again delivering an amazing series of performances and so on. And I mean, we can see her right now, looking so elegant and dashing in her evening gown and so on, and depicting a lot of pertinent things there. So we really want to say congratulations to Miss Leanne Charles. You were marvelous in terms of your delivery, and you had an amazing performance and run. And I think I speak for everybody when we say that it was well deserved. Congratulations, and we look forward to seeing you represent throughout your reign, as it were, going forward. We also want to say congratulations this evening to the Capture the Flag team. Anything that we see as good for Tobago in terms of building that community spirit, we definitely want to be able to congratulate and to get on board with it. We saw the Capture the Flag event, I mean, being described in no other word but momentous. I think there was a time when during the evening that they had to literally pause a game because the crowd was so massive, and I'm not sure if the planners or the committee actually envisaged such a response, but I must say it was an overwhelming response. Persons who would have attended the various schools that would have been participating in the actual football matches, but then we would have also seen a lot of persons come out in support of. And what was notable is the fact that you saw young people, persons who looked like they were still in school, from 1 to 5 or even from 6, they were in attendance, and then you saw persons who you could say are retired. So there was quite a wide cross-section of persons supporting this event, and we must say congratulations to the team for bringing such an event to life, especially after about 2.5 years of COVID and what it has done to us. So big congratulations to the Capture the Flag team. We move on now to the most recent in the heritage performances or stages. I want to shout out big congratulations to the Charlottesville Heritage performers, putting on quite a show yesterday from around 10 a.m. all the way through the day. And let me say this, these performers, both male, female, children, everybody, I earned a different level of respect for them yesterday when I looked at what they were delivering, and the performances and the songs and the dances and the reenactments. And all this while the sun, I am certain, went beyond 36 or 37 degrees Celsius yesterday. It was baking, and I heard one person say, well, we did pray for good weather, and my response to that was, well, this weather is now exaggerated, because the weather was beyond perfect yesterday. The sun was out in all its glory, yet still it didn't stop these wonderful men and women and children from delivering what I can only call sterling performances. And again, I would put the call out that we begin to package these things and begin to market them around the world so that it can be carried digitally in terms of the message of Tobago. So I really want to congratulate the Charlottesville Heritage performers on the Natural Treasures Day in Charlottesville, and many persons turned out. I probably think it was a record attendance for the event, all into the night. People were still arriving and that kind of thing. A remarkable event pulled off yesterday. So kudos to the organizers and the participants in that particular event. To close the What's Good moment this evening, I want to say congratulations to the lone Tobagonian in the lineup for the U.S. Embassy's Youth Ambassador Program, Miss Sohila McCool. Sohila McCool, 15-year-old Bishop student, and again we see a wide cross-section of representation coming out of Tobago, and we trust that Miss McCool will serve well in her capacity and she will continue to do her school proud, her peers, and this island of Tobago, which she represents with dignity and with class. Oh, yes, so that's it for our What's Good moment this evening, and we are going to get into our program's discussions in a little bit. So I give you the opportunity to continue to share the live link, continue to call your friends, relatives, and so on, and encourage them to log on to Tobago Updates Facebook page platform at this point in time so we can all benefit from the discussions to come. We're going to take a break, and when we get back, I'm going to introduce our guest. So let me encourage you to stay logged on, stay locked on, and continue to share the live, share the live, share the live.
Come, there we go to Tobago, that paradise, wrong by Robinson Crusoe. And it is said, it's the land of tomorrow. Princess Margaret say, come to Tobago for holiday. Now the whole world sing, come to Tobago for holiday.
The best place to stay in Tobago is at Thorns Place, with rates starting as low as 200 TT. Call or WhatsApp 745-7306 or 682-8676. We are located uptown Scarborough, 5 minutes away from the port. Remember, at Thorns Place, our aim is to make your stay safe and affordable. Heritage 2022's live coverage only on Tobago Updates. We'll bring to you live the events from the Tobago Heritage and all its pageantry. The beauty of Tobago will only unfold on the Tobago Updates 2022's live coverage.
Come, there we go to Tobago.
Welcome back to the Minority Report. This evening I have with me in studio very significant individual in Tobago, and someone that I can say to you, look out for as he continues to chart a course in his specific field here in the island, and probably, I don't know if I'm prophesying here, going regional and even international. Let me take the opportunity this evening to welcome to studio and to welcome to the Minority Report Mr. Maxlon Roberts. Welcome, Maxlon, to the Minority Report.
Thank you, it's a pleasure.
So as I introduce you, I just want to give our viewers an idea of who is Maxlon in the beginning, and then you're going to take it away from there. You, in your professional capacity, you are an agronomist, you are a crop scientist, and you are a food technologist, correct?
By definition.
Nicely.
Yes.
So before we get into the meat of discussions, tell us what this, define for us what is an agronomist, a crop scientist, and a food technologist, and what did it take for you to get to that place? Because we also want to have our young viewers and persons looking on, when they realize how exciting what you do is, they would want to know, how do I get to that place?
Well, it's indeed a pleasure to be here, and I thank you. All those that are viewing the live, I welcome. I appreciate the Minority for inviting me. And it's always a pleasure to be able to speak to my colleagues in Tobago. As you said, and if I were to define, because they're defined by the field of study that you would have engaged in. And an agronomist is basically someone who understands the holistic view or the holistic nature of cropping activity, or let's not say cropping activity, but the science behind crop production, agriculture, farming, right? Because depending on what angle you're looking at, you can look at each of these disciplines independently. But an agronomist focuses on successfully being able to cultivate and share. It's that link between technology and the science of agriculture, all right? And how you mix those two disciplines or mix those two fields and disseminate the information that and not just disseminate but practice.
Implement. Nice.
the real sense of that. Crop scientists now, you're more focused on, because you know agriculture is a broad discipline. I think it's the broadest discipline you can think of. Anything you can fathom, there's a factor of agriculture inside it. This lineage that we're resting, this cloth, the basis is agriculture that causes it to be in existence, right? So a crop scientist focuses on crop production and the science of crop production. Now, there's a difference in terms of, you can do a few tomatoes in your backyard, right? And they'll grow exceptionally well because it's probably just about 5. But a crop scientist, there's a difference when you establish a crop as something like 5,000 and above, and the dynamics that is associated with that micro climate that you create, and the whole approach changes, and the crop scientist understands how to treat with crops, different type of crops at different stages and different volumes, and understand the dynamics of the crop. An agronomist would have a sense of a number of factors as it relates to agriculture. I could be, when you're a crop scientist, you kind of specialize. You start specializing in crop activity. Okay. All right? So that is just the slight changes. And then as a food technologist, now you understand the science of food. Because when you convert a seed into something edible, when it's reached that edible form, and it's now considered food, there's a different science behind how you treat and how you interact with that. All right, so what I did, how I looked at my sequence of study, I said, well, when I did my diploma, I looked at just a general over sense of agriculture from all angles: livestock, crops, apiary, fish, all the general. And then I said, all right, so now I have this comprehensive idea of each of these factors. Let me specialize in one. So I looked at crop activities and specialized in that area, right? And now when I've specialized in that at my master's level, I decided, all right, so I can grow the crop, I have an understanding. I can get the crop done. Now I need to know how to convert this into food. Food,
yes.
Right? Because it's one thing to grow a corn, but it's one thing to convert that corn into a storageable form, storageable form, convert it into cornmeal, convert it into flour. One thing to grow the cassava, but there's another thing to convert it into a storable form, convert it into flour. There's a science at a different level that treats with all the dynamics that deals with that. So that was my thinking when and mind you, I'm continuing the study and I'm pursuing a PhD in, well, it's my Master's of Philosophy to be upgraded in food science and technology, but from the engineering standpoint, right? So it's, you have to understand the dynamics, because if you're doing something, it has to make sense.
Yes.
And you have to have a plan. And if, well, I guess we'll get into the details of that. If we really, really want to talk about food safety, food security, these kinds of things, food sovereignty, then it has to be a holistic approach, all right? And you must have that comprehensive understanding, and you must have a sequential plan that you follow to execute. So that is just me dabbling.
That's a heavy bit of information that we started off
all number of
the program with. So tell me, And you utilized a word there. We've been hearing this word a lot, food security and so on. And there are two definitions I want you to bring to life for our viewers, because as we continue to say on the Minority Report, we have a responsibility to also educate the public on different areas and to show the public what are the alternatives in terms of the way things should be done correctly. We hear the term food security. Could you define for us food security? And when we finish that, I want you to move on to define for us what is agriculture.
All right. So if I were to define food security, first and foremost, I would start saying you can't say food security without using systems in the definition. So you need food security systems.
Okay.
Right? Because food security is just a term that we can utilize. But until we place the handle of food security systems on that entire definition, then we're not going to accomplish what we're hoping to accomplish with our limited perception of food security, right? So the concept is basically for an island, a state, a country to be able to feed itself and sustain itself.
Okay.
Right? But just not to feed itself, because you're not the objective is not to feed yourself for a day. You're hoping to feed yourself for a lifetime.
Correct.
Right?
So then you start to discuss sustainability in that conversation.
Sustainability must be paramount in the conversation, and you can only accomplish the sustainability if you start talking about food security systems. And the problem we have is we keep using the term food security and not discussing the systems by which we will implement to accomplish food security. And that's just nice words, right? So not until when we get serious,
serious point there, innit?
When we get serious about accomplishing food security, we start talking about food security systems, right? And I could go into a number of systems that falls within the ambit of
share with us a few.
Let me give you an example. I take the poultry industry, right? And I use a system that they have, and it's well built out. Now, if we're talking food security and food security systems, it must start at R&D, research and development, and end at monitoring and evaluation, right? So everything from research and development to the point where you have accomplished what your aim is, and getting to the point of monitoring and evaluation, because monitoring and evaluation will inform you about what you started with.
Yeah.
So it tells you, it's a loop, it's a cycle. So it tells you, I've established a poultry industry. I've decided to use a particular species of broilers. And I have to grow this bird. Now I have to understand the feed system and how the feed system works. What am I going to put in place to ensure continuous supply of feed? What contingency am I going to put in place to ensure continuous supply of feed? Because I was privy to managing a farm before I came back to Tobago, and we used to do contract farming. So they're branding about contract farming now, basically in Tobago, and they want to, it's a good idea. But if you don't have the system in place, it's not going to work, right? Let's be realistic. Because we lacking research and development.
Okay.
Right? You need poultry avian specialists on the island, because one bout of coccidiosis or something like that on one farm in Tobago is a small place. It's going to wipe out the entire industry, and then what? Right? So you need continuous research and development. So you have to have systems in place and it must be tied into monitoring and evaluation. Now, in Trinidad, there is a very good poultry industry for broiler production, as well as eggs to some extent, because we can see the conglomerates in them and how they operate. Now, when they have one pen that holds 30,000 birds in one shot, right? We have pens, I have 500 birds, 500. They have one pen and they multiply that like hundreds of times. One unit, 30,000 birds. In that system, those, we just say the birds under AC, but they're not really under AC. It's a cooling system, right? Because if you don't keep those birds cool, it's going to retard the time by which you gain. When you're selling a bird, what do you sell? You sell weight, right?
Yeah.
So you have to understand production parameters to accomplish weight in a particular time. Those are the two factors. And those are two factors that we neglect in Tobago here. Time, we just feel it, you just do it. If you miss with your production parameters, accomplishing a particular weight in a particular time, you start incurring losses.
Wow.
As you start incurring losses, who is going to pay for the loss? You know what we try to do? Filter that onto the consumer, right? Because that's what they do. But so it's a system. It's a system that you have to understand.
Yeah.
So we just don't say let's incentivize the poultry industry and give people feed without having the knowledge
systems
and having the correct systems in place. We're just setting ourselves up. So if we're talking food security, let's talk food security systems first, not policy. Because you could have a policy, but without a system that informs the policy, that's why so much policy just ends up on a shelf somewhere taking dust. Because that's what it is. Words on a paper. Without a system to implement it, we're doomed. So food security is for an island, a state, a country to get to that point where it can feed itself sustainable. It has that level of sustainability to feed itself, but not only sustainability, you're looking at affordability. So in order to have sustainability and affordability coexisting, if you do not have the right system, as I just showed you how one mishap in the step of broiler production could affect the cost, because where's the sense having food if you can't afford it?
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
Right now, tomatoes is $20 a pound. Why is that? That has been happening since I was small, and I've watched it happen every year, and it's a simple adjustment into the system that will fix that, especially in Tobago here, because there are a number of factors that we have our advantage over, right? But we'll get into that based on some of the pointers I see that are highlighted there. So that is food security. You can't define it by itself. You must add the handle systems on it.
Right.
And to get to that point as an island, it requires work.
That's valuable information.
And are we ready to
proper
do the
education?
Work? I'm not too sure. And agriculture now.
Yeah.
Now we leave out another part of agriculture. When you did it in school, what was it called? When you were exposed to it? Agriculture science.
Agricultural science, yes.
Science. It's not just agriculture, and we keep leaving out the science, which means that there is a structured approach towards this discipline, this science, that involves knowledge of all sorts, because agriculture is very broad. So you must apply the science aspect of agriculture for it to be successful. And until we start doing these things, we'll sit here and have nice conversation.
So what I'm gathering from your last explanation there in terms of agriculture, and it's true, when we did that at school level, secondary school, it was called agricultural science.
And there's a reason for that.
But then we see persons transition from school and get into just farming.
And that is the problem. So the science of agriculture doesn't involve farming. It involves economics. It involves pedology, meaning the study of the soil, or if you're using soil. It involves a number of other, it's a multidisciplinary field. Agricultural science, it's a science that has a number of, it involves physics, it involves chemistry, because you cannot do farming without understanding chemistry. That's the problem. So people want to farm, not understanding and I will always put economic first, because I love farming. I love farming. But I love tax-free money more. Yeah, when you farm and grow food, you don't pay that much tax, right? So I always put the economic aspect of it. And what I loved about our field of study we did our major in crops and stuff, but we did a minor in entrepreneurship, which dealt with economics and the dynamics of economics and economic systems and stuff. So we got that coverage. So you have to remember that it's agricultural science, which is a multifaceted science that has a number of other science inside there. Biology, chemistry, physics, pedology.
It makes sense now. Your previous explanation about food security systems, because for the systems to be effective when implemented, you must have the knowledge of the science of it.
Mathematics is defined as the exact science. Right. Flat, just like that. And it's true, because 1 and 1 could only equal one thing, right? So it's the exact science. Agricultural science, when you understand the dynamics of it, it tells you that there are a number of layers that treats with a different aspect of the science of agriculture. So not until we start really defining, because if we really want to know where we're going or know what we're doing, definitely defining something, comprehension is very important. And I think that's one of the things we lack as you know, going forward. We lack comprehension.
Wow. You're looking and you're viewing at the Minority Report this evening. I have in studio with me my guest, Mr. Maxlon Roberts, agronomist, crop scientist, food technologist, PhD candidate presently.
That's what they call it.
and I must say the discussion is mind-boggling, very interesting, and we're going to go for a short break, and when we get back we're going to be looking at a discussion in terms of maximizing our resources using technology, and that's something you're hearing, but let's see how practical that is. So let me encourage you to share the live, stay logged on, stay locked on, get as many persons involved in this, because this is educational to each and every one of us, and it has the potential to impact the way we go forward. So we'll be right back, and we look forward to seeing you when we return.
The Street 919 FM and the Tobago Updates presents the Tobago Updates Morning Show live simulcast on the Street 919 FM. Start your day with all the information you want and need with the simulcast of the Tobago Updates Morning Show live Mondays to Fridays from 7 a.m. on the Street 919 FM, the official station that defends the nation. Heritage 2022's live coverage. Only on Tobago Updates. We'll bring to you live the events from the Tobago heritage and all its pageantry. The beauty of Tobago will only unfold on the Tobago Updates 2022's live coverage.
Come, let me go to Tobago.
Welcome back to the Minority Report, and this evening I have with me, for those who just logged on, my guest in studio, Mr. Maxlon Roberts, agronomist, crop scientist and food technologist, a PhD candidate on the way to greater and greater things. So Maxlon, we've been having quite an interesting discussion where we looked at the concept of food security and agriculture and so on. One of the things that we're hearing, especially now, and we've been seeing persons trying to find ways around it, is with the limited access to land resources and the use of technology. How do we now, going forward, maximize the limited land space that we have by marrying or bringing technology into the picture. I know you have an interesting view on that. So share with us this evening.
Well, definitely, let me be clear. It would behoove any government or institution or any island because to involve technology. And as you highlighted, particularly in the areas where we are limited by land mass, technology would be the one that is going to help us out. But not just any technology. You have to understand what is unique to you as an island, and we are small, very small. And in order to get to any secure place, in terms of food security, we must increase economies of scale. So we're using that seems kind of oxymoron. We're talking about increasing economies of scales with limited land masses, right? But we have two things that are our advantage in Tobago in terms of we have sloping lands, and I'll marry both of them. And when you consider the area of a sloped land as opposed to the area of a flat land, there is a dimension that is called the perpendicular height that is involved in the calculation of the area of the land. So you actually have a more area because of that slope. So that gives us the ability to get a little bit more out of the landmass that we have. Marine technology there in terms of, because of that situation, we're limited by being able to do certain land preparation, because on my land, for example, all my land prep is done manually. Now, I don't expect everybody to go with a hoe and a mattock and plow 2 acres of land. That's what I would do. I do that because I need it to be prepared, and I know the tractors can't do it. So if we were to do, and as I said, I lecture in UTT as well, and I do engineering. I lecture agricultural engineering. And we see areas where you design tractors. This is technology coming into play to assist you. Right? Yeah. Design tractors with a hydraulic system that allows it to operate perpendicular to the land, although it's sloped. So what you have, you can adjust the wheels. Oh, okay. So you're actually working flat and the implement, but it's on a hillside. Right? And if we're talking technology, these are the kind of things we have to, because we are limited by flat land here. And in order to get to any place seriously in terms of doing land agriculture, now there's other non-agricultural activity that doesn't require you being in the soil. Yeah. But that is what we have in the interim, and that is the most cost effective. And I will always opt for soil agriculture as opposed to soilless agriculture, because I understand the dynamics, the economics behind the two difference. But who can afford soilless agriculture, then so be it. It means that you're going to pay more for food. But nevertheless, so simple technology like that can assist us in getting these land prepared so we can now bring more land mass into production. Apart from that, if we're talking technology, we have to utilize the aerial space. Yeah. So now we have these systems that are in the air that you can capitalize on vertically, because we're limited, horizontally, so we go up. And you have these stacking type systems but they are limited by what they can do. Not only are they limited by what they can do, they are costly, right? And if our objective is to get to more food product being produced, but at a cheaper cost, right? We have to understand the dynamics of that. So technology is there to help us. Not only that, in that same course that I teach, we had we introduced the technology and asked the students, let's come up with something innovative. Let's see how, and people start come up with drones. You can use a drone that can assist you. I don't have to leave here to go to my farm in Lowido to see if somebody up there tonight. Technology could allow me to know, oh yeah, the camera is on. Oh, yeah, so that's what's happening there. I can get a drone to map out my entire acreage and can target specific pests and stuff like that, can apply pesticides and stuff like that, which doesn't require me physically doing it. So what I would take hours to do, a drone will just fly across and do it, and we can get to that point. right? Those are the kind of things we have to consider.
You mentioned something there in terms of being able to see your farm just from your phone. And even that, I would have been privy to prior discussions where farmers, one of the things that farmers lament over is the stealing, predial larceny, you know, and I mean, if technology can be afforded them.
Exactly. But I can't have a camera system. Well, they have solar ones now, but in areas where it doesn't have any electricity, where it doesn't have any access roads properly for me to access my farm, where it doesn't have certain things. I can't have where our lands have these massive hydroponic systems. That, you know, you can't have that kind of soilless hydroponics and these things when we don't have water.
So is it that all this what we're speaking of here is part of the systems that you spoke of earlier?
Right? So it's one thing to say one thing. We can't, as I was saying to you earlier, I remember the parable of the talents. Right? He gave one, he gave one, 2, and he gave 1, 3. You hit your one, you didn't maximize your one talent. We're not maximizing what we have.
Yeah.
We're not utilizing what we have. You're asking me to go and invest in something that I don't have knowledge of, really. And the sooner we incorporate technology, the better for us, because we're playing catch up right now with other parts of the world, right? You see in Saudi Arabia, I think they utilize the desert. They've converted the desert lands to arable lands by bringing mass amount of salt water, distilling it, and using it as irrigation. We have plenty of salt water here.
Define to our viewers, you use that term arable lands. I know not all of us had the benefit of agricultural science. So define for our viewers, when you say converted the desert into arable lands, what do you mean?
Right, lands that you can actually cultivate and get a harvest from. So that's the next point. In Tobago, we've categorized soils by classes, right? And class 1 would be the best and stuff. But what we've found is because of the topography of the land, you could have a class 1 soil type, but because of the topography, it carries that soil into for want of a better word, a lower class, which would not make it conducive to crop production, arable. But it's good soil. But because it's of the slope of it, if you do certain things on that land without understanding the science behind it, you're going to take that arable land that is good, fertile, can grow stuff easy, with least amount of chemicals and stuff like that, and convert it into a lower class soil type if you don't understand what you're doing. So we have arable lands, but because of the class in which it falls, we have problems. So that and all it limits our access to land, the land that we do have. All right?
Very, very interesting. I want us, I mean, the discussion so far has been I mean, very, very educational. Even for me, there are a lot of things that you would have pointed out that it's not just that it makes sense, but you can see the relevance and the practicality in it. And so I must say, I want to thank you for bringing this level of understanding to us this evening. I want us to shift a bit. We came out of the budget presentations recently, and one of the things that we've been seeking to do is also to assess the minorities debate presentation, and there were some categories that recommendations were made in, and we want to take a look at some of the recommendations that were made in the area of agriculture by the minority, and I'll ask the director to pull up on the screen. So I'll just read out for the benefit of our listeners as well, and not just viewers. Create commercial chillers for farmers for rent and further incentivize local food storage capabilities. Revolutionize access to effective land preparation, and this is not to land, but land preparation.
Right, and I spoke
and you spoke to it a bit a while ago. promote climate smart production, example greenhouse, shade house, hydroponics development programs, and I'm going to round off the first set, access to finance with the requisite technical support to agribusiness development. Just share a bit in terms of those first four, and we'll come close it off with the final four.
So, well, I don't.
Mr. Director, pull it up on the screen, please.
But the first one, as we said, I think my phone died.
Construction of.
So you could just right, create.
Thank you.
Right. That in particular, I believe that existed at one point when I just came back, and I was like, that is an absolute need. So I can mass produce, and I know that I have a place to store, so I can mass produce and store and take as I need. And that was sold as available to farmers on the island. Lo and behold, when I should have checked first before I went to mass produce and then hope to carry it to store. When I went to store, there was no chillers. There were freezers, right? Now, fresh produce needs to be chilled. Right? Because in fresh production, in food production, there is two types of atmosphere. There's control atmosphere and there's modify atmosphere. When you combine both control and modify atmosphere, you get the best. Those two combinations can offer you extensive shelf life in produce, fresh produce. Like the apples you eat today from America, it's over a year old because they have them in the right.
Seriously?
Yeah. Nevertheless, you
Wow.
go down the road. But so that is critical. And so when I faced that reality that the chillers did not exist where they said they would be, and that system was in place, I incurred a lot of loss. I eventually started investigating, how do I get my own chiller? I wanted a 40-foot chiller, the kind of money it's going to cost me. The reality is that was just an idea, but the kind of money to get that done. So something like that is critical. It is critical. It's part of the system. Because it's part of the system, because when you mass produce, you're asking people to upscale, increase economies of scale. What are they going to do with all the produce? Produce, though, when mangoes start to ripe, they just start ripe.
Yeah.
It's not like they're going to ripe today as you need it to. When tomatoes start coming in, they come in. So you need to be able to have a system that allows the farmers to store. So that is critical.
Wow.
Right?
The next point, and I wanted you to touch on this before we move forward, revolutionize the access to effective land preparation.
Well, I spoke a bit in that in terms of just thinking of how we can simply adjust a tractor. Now, we have persons doing MIC and MIT and these kind of engineering type courses. And that's just a hydraulic system that would allow it to be perpendicular to the land when it's on a slope. So it's just you adjust one side, which we don't have, and I've seen that operating in St. Vincent. So I know it exists. My colleagues when I studied is who told me about it, because he was a tractor operator. So they know about it, right? So it can be done, and it's something needed here. But when we're talking about revolutionizing, I think we have to revolutionize our thinking as it relates to agriculture firstly, before we can revolutionize any other aspect of the field. Because if our perception is off, if our concept, if our philosophy is off of what we think agriculture should be, then we'll have a challenge revolutionizing everything else.
Well,
right?
I'm certain that the information being shared tonight is helping some persons revolutionize the way they think. We saw promoting climate smart production.
Right.
And that's interesting. Climate smart.
Climate smart. And I see the example of greenhouses and shade houses. What works for us? As I said, if we're understanding food security systems, we have to have research and development. And what we have learned is that greenhouses are not for us. A greenhouse was designed to capture heat. That's a unique thing. So it was designed for temperate regions, to keep heat in the winter period. We don't need to keep heat in here. We need to get heat out.
Okay.
So when we started the initial trials, We had these nice greenhouses with antiviral net, and we had to put in some big extractor fans to get heat out. Right?
Wow.
The heat stress on the plants was so much that the plants can't function because they're always wilted and they can't absorb the nutrients required and transport it to the parts of the plants that is needed. So we have to understand what works for us. We just don't take stuff and copy. So when they talk about them,
So we saw the examples of what climate smart production is,
Right.
and so that's what was listed: greenhouse, shade house, and that
So
kind of
shade
thing.
houses are for us.
That's where I'm going to now. So in terms of our climate, climate smart production would entail
Right.
shade houses.
right, because we need shade houses and we need them particularly in the wet season, because what it does is avoid that excessive amount of water, uncontrollable, and that is what that dictates that. So when I talked about food security systems, there's a system that must be in place for the dry season,
Yeah.
and a completely different system needs to be in place for the wet season, right? Right? Don't feel-
Real smart
Right.
systems.
Yeah. So those shade houses would keep that abundance of water off. The reason why tomatoes are $20 a pound, and they will now start to rise. The rain really start to get rain yet, right? So it's because it is challenging to grow these crops in the wet season. And the problem we have is there are persons who just don't know how to do it. There's one. Tobago is full of hillsides, so we could grow it year round, but next thing I say. Trinidad floods with the flatlands. Tomatoes won't grow there. So they just avoid growing it, period. So you have to depend on getting it from somewhere else. And if you have tomato now, you have gold. So to understand the systems, the smart systems, you have to understand the environment in which you're operating. So shade house would keep off that excess amount of water in the wet season, and now I can grow my crops relatively good, right? We talked about hydroponics. Now, that is a smart system. It alleviates the amount of intensive work, the intensive bending and stuff, but there's a cost attached to it. Because now with these hydroponic system, there's something referred to as nutrient film techniques, meaning you always have this nutrient solution that is being passed over the roots of the plant, is where they get their nutrients from, because they don't have soil to actually absorb whatever nutrients. That nutrient film technique, that nutrient solution comes at a cost. And because of what we've seen happen with COVID and the rising cost of raw materials, to grow a lettuce now in an NFT technique is going to be very costly.
Wow.
So you understand
Everything
when I said
has its
systems,
balance, every
right?
system.
So the smart systems are going to help us. When I spoke about the drones assisting us in some areas, if we could even get to the point where we can have IT coming to play a role in labor and making the easing off the workload, the physical labor, because I have to do it. Before I come here, I have to be on the farm, picking tomatoes, and I have to run back down here, because it's just me trying to do so much things. So those kind of smart systems in terms of IT and technology is definitely gonna give us an edge.
So we wanna just look at a couple more before we close off on that. We saw in the next slide, construction of a feed mill is pivotal to livestock using indigenous raw materials, and I know you will have something to say on that. 6, labor incentives for agriculture.
That's very interesting.
Utilizing youth involvement to reduce the average age of farmers and provide incentives such as loans as well as lands. And I know what impacts that recommendation is the fact that when you look around, a lot of the farmers are aged, and it's difficult to get a loan at a certain age because they factor in the time that you have to pay.
Of course,
so you need to have younger persons drawn as well, and then to create sustainable integrated farms that can produce both vegetables and meats. I want you to just share your comments on that, and then we'll close off as our time.
A feed mill is critical on the island, because and the specifics of using indigenous materials is also is what jumped out, because for livestock, let's say the ruminant species, sheep, the goat, we have a lot of high quality forage here. There's a difference between forage and feed, but We have a high quality forage. All that Gloricidia, you see, when you look outside, right outside there on the highway, you see Leucaena and Gloricidia in abundance. Those are extremely high quality forage. Now, animals, that pangola that you see, they're cutting on the side of the road, the whole of the highway, that don't go into that is an ideal forage, right? But it's wasting for the next thing. And if we can utilize some of these, because as I said, the food security system, the system must be in place for this to work. If you're going to have a feed mill, you need to start thinking, having research done on what raw materials are the ideal raw materials to be used. And I'm saying if you're going that way, I can't understand why we haven't have a feed millers yet. Because we feed, the main components of feed is a carbohydrate source and a protein source, right? Let me give you a simple example. We have all kind of carbohydrate source here. Breadfruit, I say breadfruit. Breadfruit is not dog as we just say here. Perfect carbohydrate source, perfect starch source to be the bulk of our animal feed. The substitute to that is corn or soybean. We don't grow soybean, we can't grow it. We could grow the whole lot of Tobago in corn, we wouldn't get enough corn to make feed. No, I'm serious.
Yeah.
Right? So we have to use what we have. Then we have, this is Tobago's a fishing island. All the fish meal, all the renderings of the fish, that they convert that into what is referred to as fish meal, which is a high quality source of protein. So if you have a system that is collecting that, converting it into a meal, and then we have the system collecting the raw materials that we have, the forages that we have, and the carbohydrate source, and we combine that through our research and development, we can substitute a significant amount of the feed. The reason why livestock and things are so expensive because the feed is the most challenging and one of the most expensive materials to produce any livestock. Right?
Wow.
So we have that. So
labor initiatives, labor incentives.
I would love to know of some of those so I can use them because we need them. But we had to bring Venezuela. We had to bring I don't know because we really need to have some work done in terms of getting labor. So technology is what's going to assist us there as well.
Yeah.
Right? That's where it comes in because where we fall short on labor because the reality is agriculture is intensive. It's intensive at times, right? And it's just that's just how it is at times because that's just the nature of the science, and it requires labor. And any endeavor that can assist with that labor, we have. I wouldn't say go there. Take CPEP and reforestation workers, and that's our next conversation. But I'll leave that right there.
Utilizing youth involvement and to reduce the average age of farmers. Well, we started discussing that.
Because me ain't no youth no more. I say when you cross 40, something that's happened that you can't do at 25, right?
Yeah. Exactly.
And so the youth is the person's. When I see the youth of a country is idling, it's frightening. Because it tells you where your country is going to be in the next 50 years. Because in the next 50 years, the youths are the ones who's going to be the leaders. So when the youth of a country is idling, it hurts me. So we need to get them involved. We need to get them back involved. We need to encourage them. We need to do stuff. And my philosophy is you teach to the clarity of your example. Words does not teach. It's only life experiences that teaches. So we can use all the amount of words we want. It's not going to catch them. So I inspire people to do what I do by physically doing it. And when they see me doing that, they say, if he could do it, I could do it. And that encourages the youth in my areas to come around. I want to know. I want to learn because I teach by example. And that is how we're going to get the youth involved. So we don't talk it. We get involved.
Wow. And finally, creating sustainably integrated farms that can produce both vegetables and meats.
Right, sustainable integrated. As I was just saying to you, if we have a fishing industry with all the renderings, if you want to develop a poultry industry with all the renderings, you have to have a system, a abattoir. We're not going to get anywhere until we have a... Now, the abattoir for sheep and goats is not the same as the abattoir for poultry, right? So you can't take the poultry them there and carry it to the abattoir. No, it is a system, a different system for that. The renderings of that, meaning the viscerals, the guts, the heads, the feet, the feathers. There's a process that we subject that to call rendering. That then is then turned into what is referred to as meal, which represents the protein base for another feed. You know, and then you add that to a feed. So you add that to your corn or your soybean. And make in our case, we add that to our breadfruit. We add that to our cassava. Well, cassava has cyanide, so you have to be careful. But we add that to our starch base and combine all of those lovely forages that just waste in the whole of the highway from you leave Kong Point. All that grass, them bush you see, majority of that is high quality forage. So it means somebody had an idea for the livestock industry at some point in this island. I don't know what happened to that. And you combine all of those, and you can do your research, do your R&D, and you would see potential for developing a feed mill. Then you have a reason to develop it because you know where you're getting your raw materials from. And then you can combine that and use each sector to feed each sector, to assist each sector. So it can be done. And those are the kind of thinking that we need to have. But how do we develop the system around these points? What is going to get us to the, you know?
Well, it clearly shows, based on the recommendations, that the minority leader and minority councillor would have done their homework in terms of coming up with these recommendations to be able to take the agro-industry in Tobago forward. And a lot of these recommendations, when you really look at them and you begin to do the research, it's tied to the global conversation of the circular economy, where the end product for one becomes the beginning of the life of the other. And so we really...
How do we take these from recommendations to actualization to implementation is another conversation. And they need to move from recommendations to actually implementation. And that is how we're going to actually move the goalposts. Because I use a philosophy, I say, from the time we sat here in this program, if I had planted a seed, the unique thing about a seed, that seed would have started doing what it is required to do to bring forward food. So we there talking, we could come back here next week, that seed growing. That seed will bring forth food, right? Because we planted it. These are recommendations. That is not the planting stage. We need to actually start planting the seeds of food security and sustainability to start seeing, to hope for a harvest in the future. Wow. We need to set those seeds in motion. Those recommendations are seeds. They need to be planted. They're not being planted.
Words of wisdom. And it's a fitting note to close the program on this evening. You've been viewing the Minority Report with me, Marlon David, as your host, and my guest in studio, Maxlon Roberts. I mean, we had a very, very interesting discussion this evening, and again, we continue to say that one of the objectives of the minority leader, minority council, and so on, the minority council on a whole, is not just to oppose or to hold the government accountable, but it's also with respect to educating our public, educating our viewers in terms of what can be done and what should be done. And it's a really innovative approach that this minority council has been taking in terms of doing the research and so on, so that when recommendations come forward, they're meaningful recommendations and valuable, and definitely can take Tobago forward into what we can look forward to as a developing island state. Thank you for viewing with us this evening. Let me thank Maxlon for being on the program. You're a busy man. And you would have made the time. I really want to thank you. I appreciate the information that you would have been able to share with us this evening. And for those viewers and our listeners, let me encourage you each week to be with us here on the Tuesday night beginning at 8 p.m. on the Minority Report, as we explore a number of topics, a number of discussions that are beneficial to the development of this island that we all love, called Tobago. Let me say good night And let me say thank you for viewing and have a wonderful evening.